So you want to offer fractional CFO services, but you haven't actually been a CFO before. Are you capable of doing it? What all does it entail? Fractional CFO, virtual CFO, they're kind of a buzzword in the CAS space, but what does it actually mean? And more importantly, should you be offering this as a service? Every firm seems to be offering some kind of CFO services, but let's be real. We don't really have a good definition around that. Is it forecasting? Is it cash flow management? Is it strategy? Well, the answer is it depends. So let's break down what it actually is, what we think it is, what clients actually need, and whether or not you should be servicing it. Here's a teaser. I don't think you actually have to have ever been a CFO to be a really good fractional CFO. Let's dive into that. It's going to get a little bit weird today and a little sensitive for those who have been CFOs in industry who are now providing a fractional CFO service. So, is this service overhyped, or is it something that's essential for our clients to move forward? Why does it mean different things to different people? If you're in industry, if you're running a business and you're looking for a fractional CFO, you're often likely thinking about it through the lens of what is a typical controller doing as somebody in industry, and accounting would define it. So what I mean by that is that if I'm a business owner that's operating in a manufacturing space, I'm trying to figure out who is the right person to help me get my finances in order so that potentially I can take that to an external stakeholder, a bank, an investor, or some other outside party. So I want to get my financials in line. What oftentimes business owners don't think of is that starts at the bookkeeping rhythm, that starts at the month-end close rhythm, that starts with really quality transactional accounting and controllership. However, not too many folks that I've come across think about this through the lens of we need strategic advisory. We need a CFO to help us negotiate debt agreements, to negotiate capital terms, to put together an employee stock ownership program. Those are really more complicated initiatives that a CFO would be managing. And the companies that I've seen evaluate this most strategically are those that are venture capital backed, have some sort of outside pressure or influence, have a high degree of complexity, and are rapidly advancing to the next stage of their business, or maybe approaching some sort of liquidation event. And so I think there's variation in how people actually think about this to define whether or not it is overhyped or it's an essential service. But what we do know is that the demand for this is growing. What does a virtual or fractional CFO actually do? What I think is most important to think about here is that the core function is simply to solve problems. It's getting clients unstuck. It's creating an identification of what's holding the company back from achieving their goals. Is that a lack of visibility into cash? Is it potentially addressing poor accounting and bookkeeping rhythms? Is it pricing and margin issues? What is it that's holding a company back from meeting their goals? A fractional CFO's core job is to solve those problems and to manage a team to help solve those problems. Oftentimes, they do come in through the lens of we have a discrete need that needs to be solved through cash flow forecasting, or maybe it's a scenario planning analysis, something like that. However, their job is to distill what are the things that make up the problems that are causing the client to believe that they want this type of outcome. If we go beyond the numbers here, virtual CFOs aren't just reporting financials, they're trying to help their clients understand them and take action based on them. And I don't think you need to have been a CFO in industry in order to be a successful fractional CFO. Now, I caveat that when you get to the realms of going through an IPO or advising on some complicated equity structure, you have to have experience to be able to advise those types of clients well. But for the general understanding of supporting a small business as a fractional CFO, if you can get your clients unstuck, solve problems, and help them understand their financials, you are sitting in the top quartile of folks that are offering these services. Because what you see most often is that folks are actually offering these services, but realistically, they're just generating reports with some type of trend analysis and not doing much after the fact. It's really been diluted in market, so you can set yourself apart from others by simply educating and encouraging and understanding what those problems are in the business, educating your clients on them, and then helping solve those problems. So if we think about a CAS advisory versus fractional CFO, I think they're often kind of the same thing. When we think about this through the lens of how CPA.com has defined it, they've got the spectrum of CAS services. And as you move up the ladder of CAS services, you're moving towards business insights, you're moving towards CFO. However, I think that this philosophy of a fractional CFO being more problem solving oriented than anything extends throughout the entire life cycle of your relationship with a client, from transaction to month end close to reporting to strategic advisory. So I'd argue that you can almost provide a fractional CFO service along the spectrum of you servicing a client and not necessarily just at the end. Now, why do businesses hire virtual CFOs? Their financial complexity is growing. They're starting to feel some friction in their business and don't understand what's causing this friction. Or maybe they are approaching some sort of big ticket event in their life cycle as a business that they just need help assessing. So, should you be offering these types of services? I think if you are the type or your team is the type of team that enjoys solving strategic problems and can dig in and go 2 to 3 layers deeper to understand the core why of what's driving the business outcome, and you're comfortable of having those conversations with your clients and then commit to an ongoing supporting relationship to solve those problems, you are very well positioned to take on these types of services. Now, you do need to have a deep understanding of financial forecasting and how a balance sheet and a P&L all works together, and then understanding the rhythms that go into business operations in order to understand the drivers of these problems. You must have incredibly strong communication and leadership skills in order to translate this complex information into something that's actionable for your client. Some of the challenges you may face is that these tend to be a little bit more demanding client relationships because they're paying a lot for a high bar of success to solve problems, to provide insights. And you should have a clear scope of how you can achieve that, even though there is a lot of nebulous outcomes to that type of engagement when you are just trying to solve problems and provide insights. Like, that's not a scope, right? So you want your scope to be more clearly defined around the deliverable, around the communication cadence, and then reflect the value through the problems that you've solved in the past and how you could do that for your client. I do think it's a really interesting area to get into. A lot of clients can use it, and it provides kind of a sweet spot for your firm to kind of culminate your work into this strategic initiative with a client to help them move forward. You could start doing this by just pilot offering a test virtual CFO or fractional CFO service with a couple of clients. See how that goes. Try to figure out what the rhythms are that are right for your firm. I've seen many great examples of firms doing this really, really well. So just look up fractional CFO or virtual CFO and see what comes up. You'll see a lot of great examples online of what initial scope could look like for your services. From there, you could start to build a playbook around this, build a playbook around client communication, deliverables. You want to introduce a rhythm to your clients, something that becomes second nature to them and embeds you in their process. I will say that the fractional CFO services aren't for every CAS firm. But those that are willing to go beyond just that basic reporting, even visualized reporting or KPI dashboarding, like, that's not fractional CFO services. If you're stepping into more strategic leadership, strategic problem solving, now you're starting to have that type of relationship that would be more assimilated with that of a fractional CFO. You want to help your client sit in the driver's seat. You want to sit shotgun. You want to help guide them down this road that they are on in the best way possible. There's a lot of nuance to this topic, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and you just need to understand whether or not this is the right direction for you. But I don't think you need to have been in the seat of a CFO in industry to be a great fractional CFO. I hope that's helpful. More next time.